Hey, yeah, what's up? The disciple Marshall Occurrence reign back up in this anti-Illuminati all day, anti-America all day. So yeah, I'm also making part of this campaign that I got. The campaign is that I've been doing for months is about the 44 states marrying the children, the age of consent being under 18 in 40 states. July 1st, 2019, 20 states passed a law that allows adults to marry children at any age. And America has the world record for the lowest age of consent. In the state of Delaware, in 1880, 7 years old. Okay, that's the campaign. You know what I'm saying? Because they are here always harping on R. Kelly's, the R. Kellys of the world, the Bill Cosby's of the world, even I would say even go back to the Michael Jacksons of the world. And what people forget also is that it. Let's be 100. Culturally speaking, if we break it down to the culture and of pedophilia, it has been a problem in white America. Okay, now is that a racist statement or is it a statistic statement? When you have 72% of registered sex offenders are white guys, are white men and women. 72%. This is not my opinion. This is not my hunches or watching body language or watching thought process or any of that. This is based on who gets registered. And 72% of registered sex offenders are white Americans. The 28% makes up everyone else. All the different various races that do these pedophilia acts. But the bulk of it is a white cultural problem. And that's why it's so elementary as far as its approach. You still ain't catching the people that's doing it. You know why? Because it's a white problem. And you're not sophisticated towards your own people when it comes to locking them up and prosecuting them. If you look at what is the other thing, these what we call mass shootings, or let's just say racist uh, militias. Now, this is the reason why it hasn't been tackled because it's also a white problem. These white boys go get guns and they go shooting fields. Black guys, the average cannot go shooting fields. Speaking for the nation, as far as nationwide wise, they can't go out into fields. White guys all across the country can go get guns and shoot in fields and form militias. This explains why they go undetected until they make themselves known through shootings or through riots or protests. We don't know them or see them until something happens, in other words. Now, show you a perfect example. NFAC is a black militia in America. The leader done got locked up before. I would think they being targeted to a degree. As soon as a black militia pop up, oh, let's investigate. You ain't investigating these white militias until they show themselves, because now there's a pressure to perform. There's a pressure to investigate from the community. People want to know why you ain't know about it. People want to know why you ain't done why they go undetected. Because everything in white America goes undetected. That's why. Nothing goes undetected in the black community. Nothing. Nothing. And that's the difference. You know. So yeah, that's what my mindset is at on things of such as that, Now, but this video, I want to get into something I've been thinking about for some time, like for I would say about 3 years. This has been a message that I've been wanting to put out, And in so many ways, I touch on it in my videos. Out of the 400 something videos I got, I touch on it a little bit. But I'm going to be campaigning also about the baby boomers generation, because I think that Americans, especially young Americans, and a little bit older than the baby boomers, in some baby boomers that are innocent, they still need to know what their generation has done to this country. Okay, so I'm going to be hitting on the baby boomers. Like it's an issue. It's a real issue because they were a pivotal point in time in America where things were trying to get better between, as far as the whole country, as far as how race relates, the different ethnicities relate to each other. The baby boomers hit a pivotal point where there was opportunities for things to get better. But what I personally believe is a lot of the baby boomers that were of African American descent decided to join the white American baby boomers a little too quickly before there was justice, freedom for the overall African American community. Before there was freedom, a lot of baby boomers were just happy to be with the white man, happy to be with a white America. And they were not totally free from racism. They still not totally free from racism. So they joined them, white America, African Americans, baby boomers, many of them, and they joined their cause. So then if you join their cause, then you neglected the cause of giving African Americans the freedom that they need. That's what happened. There was no one there. Because all the baby boomers, particularly a lot of them that were African American, were joining a white American cause. And a lot of them white American cause was not to per se build up the African American experience in America and its community. Remind you, everybody and their mom got their own community that's prosperous. That's you have whites that's in poverty, but you have white communities that's not in poverty. You have Mexican communities that are in poverty, but you have also prosperous, wealthy, I'm gonna say healthy Mexican American communities that do not really have poverty. Look around. That's not ghettos. Those are not ghettos. And then that's not poverty living. That's not Section 8 living. You got Chinatown. We've had Chinatowns for 1,000,000 years. No disrespect to them. I'm part Asian myself. Doesn't mean I can't be racist, but I'm not. They've had Chinatowns in every major city. So how come the African American experience is still in shambles as far as the bulk of it? It's the ghetto. That's the Black American experience for the most part. So why hasn't that been developed? Why is the African American the only community that does not have its own community outside of other races in America? Why? I'm gonna tell you why. Because I personally believe the baby boomers failed the African American community. Yes, they did. They failed because it was a pivotal point where African Americans was going in numbers to the military. They were doing everything. They were being teachers. They were doing all this. But what they failed to do was continue the progress of building up the African American community. The Chinese didn't have to wait 1,000,000 years to get a prosperous community. The Mexicans, they're the latest community that has prosperous communities outside of a poverty community in the ghetto. And they didn't have to wait 1,000,000 years for it. So why black people got to wait 1,000,000 years for it? Answer this question. Why do every time an African American get wealthy, they got to go to a white neighborhood? I'm going to let that resonate. Every time African Americans get money, they got to go convert to living in a white neighborhood. People that may not necessarily, I'm not going to say all the time, but may not necessarily be understanding to their experience in America or being able to relate to their experience in America. Why can't they go around people that have been through the struggle and now they're prosperous and they're all prosperous, and therefore it's beautiful because they all can relate to each other? Why can't that be the case? Because it's almost like white America wants to keep its eye on black people. So guess what? You go from being monitored in the ghetto to now being monitored in the rich neighborhood. That's white. So you get from being monitored by the police, that's gone, but now you're being monitored by rich people. which can call the police. They can call the police on you in a rich neighborhood, just in case you get out of control. And to me, that's where particularly the baby boomers failed the African American community. You thought it was just good enough for African Americans to be going to the military. You thought that was good enough. Oh, okay, we're going to the military. Everything is getting better. They showed me love in the military. No, they used you in the military. They utilized you in the military for the government's own purpose. The same government that has never had the age of consent at 18 in all 50 states. While you were serving in the military, I don't care which war you served in, which tours you did. While you were doing those tours, there has never been the age of consent at 18 in all 50 states in America. And that's the reality you have to deal with, whether you accept it or not, whether you like it or not. And some of you are depressed about it. Some of you, now that you know what the real state of this country is, you're depressed. But like I said before, did you do it? Did you have anything to do with that? Then you have to begin to sever your ties with people that are not like-minded. The Bible says this: how can two men walk together unless they agree? That's what the Bible says. How can two men walk together unless they agree? In other words, you cannot strive with anyone in disagreement. And you're in disagreement with what this country is doing. With the age of consent being under 18 in 40 states. 40 states allow the age of consent to be under 18. Never having the age of consent at 18 in 50 states. I'm trying to show you how your country should be. And if you think it's a pipe dream, then why California doing it? Why California got the age of consent at 18? Why do Florida have the age of consent at 18? Then it's easy to do, in other words. You just haven't done it. For whatever reason. And I say pedophilia reasons. You're not at the age of consent being at 18 in all 50 states. And you could say the baby boomers have something to do with that. So this video is going to be young lion versus old lion versus young lion. And there's nobody I'm thinking about in particular. I don't want anybody to flatter themselves thinking that I'm addressing one individual or a couple individuals. This is something I've been thinking about for at least 3 years. So that puts you out the picture. This is something that I noticed, that in the American community, what y'all call the old heads, they don't pass the baton. They don't pass the torch. They don't pass the legacy. They don't pass the goods. They don't pass the throne. And at some point, just naturally speaking, in humanity, the throne has to get passed. It has to get passed on to the next generation. It has to. And what the baby boomers, here's the part you gotta listen to. Here's the punchline. In the baby boomers generation, they sat back and hoarded all their legacy, everything. They hoarded it all, and they didn't pass it on. And now that's why you have a huge gap between what the legacy was in America as opposed to what it is now. See, they didn't pass the torch. They did not pass the legacy and throne. All they says is, look, you see what I can do? See what I'm capable of? See what I got? See all this I got? See all this legacy I got? And you didn't pass it on to the next generation. That's the foundational mistake to me of the baby boomers, is not just their own flaws and not just the things that they did wrong necessarily. It was the fact that they didn't pass on with this legacy to the next generation for the sake of fulfilling the potential of the overall American community. They didn't fulfill it. They hoarded it. Look at it for what it is. And a lot of you guys that are like my age and younger, I'm 41. Everybody 41 and younger, your parents were baby boomers. Your parents were baby boomers. And with that being said, some of the fathers wasn't even there to pass legacy, to pass on the goods in the American community. They didn't pass it on. So now that's why you have guys out here that they don't have a sense of direction. They don't have the goods they don't have the goods from the baby boomer generation. They don't have none of that. And so what you have is condescending baby boomers. Condescending. That's the particular generation. If I had to look at any generation that made the worst mistakes, it would be the baby boomers. Can everybody agree with that? The baby boomers were the worst generation to as far as it was a bittersweet situation. It's a catch-22 situation. Almost an oxymoron. They had the potential to be the best, and then they were the worst. And where they were the worst at was, like I said, not passing the legacy on, not passing all the goods, the things they got from the military, the things they learned in these positions that they got in America, passing it on to the next generation. They didn't do that. The fathers were not there, and a lot of the baby boom fathers were not there, and they didn't pass the torch on to their children. They didn't do it. And like I said, that's why you have some guys that are my age and younger don't have a sense of direction. It's not all their fault. Also, the baby boomers were the generation that was partying the hardest. Remind you, they had the best cocaine. I'm just keeping 100. They had, so I'm gonna say the best marijuana. They had the best drugs. You didn't, if you overdose, that's cause what? Probably because you got greedy. You got greedy, and it wasn't never enough, and that's why you overdosed. But they partied so much, they neglected their responsibilities. They neglected cultivating the next move. They had the potential to be the greatest generation of America, but they were the worst because they're the most at fault. You can't blame Generation X and younger. You really can't, because they was a byproduct of the baby boomers. They were raised by the baby boomers. Generation X was raised. I'm a part of Generation X. I am literally of Generation X. Now you got Z and all different other ones. We are children of the baby boomers. Okay? And if you look at it for the most part, you see where it's at. Generation X were the ones that was out there doing all that stuff. Now that being said, who were their parents? You know who their parents were. Their parents were the baby boomers. So they're at fault as far as parenting also. Yes, they are. A lot of the baby boomers were not even in their children's lives. And if they were partying. And if it wasn't that, they just, even with their own children, they just hoarded the legacy. They hoarded the throne. They hoarded everything they learned from this community. And that's why you have a gulf between the baby boomers and Generation X. That's why it's a huge gulf. And then when you find someone like me that rises out of Generation X, now you want to sit up and act like I owe you some type of respect. And see, that's part of the campaign. Respect that's not earned, that the baby boomer wants. The baby boomer wants all the respect in the world. But where you pass the torch at? Where did you pass on your goods to the next generation? You didn't do that, really. Not really. There was a gulf, and things just went on, and people taught themselves. But if you really look at it from spirit and energy and everything, they really just didn't do it. They sit back very, very condescending, and I peeped that over time everywhere I went. It's a very condescending energy around the baby boomers. Go look up the ages that are the baby boomers. Go look up what what will be their children. And now you can see the difference between their children and them. You would think they would be the same. You would think the baby boomers' children would be amazing from all the pivotal turns that happened during the era of the baby boomers. But that's not the case. That's not the case. So I'm going to be touching on the baby boomers' mistakes, things they did wrong, and ultimately the foundational thing is they did not pass on the legacy of America to the next generation, and they had it in their hands. And if you look at military, you look at everything that's in our community, the baby boomers hit that very nice magical place where it was just like so much success and potential. And where did it all go? Where did all the potential that the baby boomers had, not just going to the military, when they came back and everything else in between throughout the whole society, why did the baby boomers fail? And they did fail because they refused. They got so drunken on their own success, which really, it really was more just where America was at that time, as opposed to who they were as individuals. But they took it as they gassed themselves and stroked their own ego and just sat back and said, "Look at me." And really, they were just a product of where America was at the time. And so, when people want to play the blame game, when we want to do that and go down memory lane, you're going to find yourself coming to a particular generation, maybe a dynamic that you didn't look at. Maybe you didn't break it down to a generation. Maybe you didn't do that. You just looked at what time problems happened, the mistakes that happened, and you just left it at that. You didn't look at the fact that it was a Pacific generation. And some people have. Some people have, in so many ways, talked about the problems of the baby boomers, but you didn't break it down to the generation. Well, we don't see anything in our culture really that's showing us that. So here I go again, showing you another problem. Here I go again. Something that other people are not really pointing to. Not enough, obviously. And now the children of the baby boomers are grown up. It's kind of too late now. You should have been installing all that energy and all of those informations. You should have been installing them all into them when the time was to do so. You waited too long and you waited too late. And now you're sitting back with the shoulda, woulda, coulda kind of mentality. Because a lot of you know I'm right. A lot of you look at your own life, but you don't think about you was that generation that was a pivotal, also another pivotal point for America. It's either going to become better or worse based on your generation. And it became worse. Look at the presidents during look at the pivotal turns, or look at the era of the presidents that were in the baby boomer era. Look at how pivotal all of it was. All of it was pivotal, very pivotal. So I'm not saying going around, you might have had the greatest parents in the world. I'm not saying go back and blame your parents, but overall as a generation, that baby boomers generation, they failed a lot of people. They failed the country. They failed the culture. They failed everything. And what they did was they locked into their own successes, if you will, and just didn't worry about the future of America. Now everyone wants to play catch up, make up for time, and play cleanup, and it's too late. You can't. One thing you can't do with time, you can't manipulate it once it's gone. Once time is gone, you can still do stuff, but you can't manipulate as far as all the time you could have been doing this, all the time you could have been doing that, all the time you could have been installing in the next generation all these good things. You didn't do that. So now it's impossible because now the Generation X got kids They don't have time to sit under your tutelage or sit under you as a student. They don't really have that time anymore. They got kids they gotta raise. So see, how they gonna come sit under you when they ain't under your roof anymore? They can't do it. You can't get that hands-on teaching anymore. I mean, you can set up things for them too, but then still, it's still things that just went by so bad. It went by too long, and things went left, went unchecked, and went unchanged. And now it's just, you can't manipulate time in all situations, is the better thing to say. You just can't. Some people say it's never too late. Okay, I agree with that. To a certain degree, though, sometimes what you could have been doing, you won't have the next time. You won't have the opportunity to do it again. And it's better to say it just like this. It's no way that the baby boomers are going to have the time to do what they did, should have did in the past. They're not going to have the full time to do that. And they know I'm right. And like I said, you could have came from great parents that were baby boomers, but that does not speak for the baby boomers as a culture and as a whole generation. This campaign or dynamic or this particular campaign is about understanding the generations as the failures of it, the successes of it. And I'm gonna dig into some researches, if you will, and figure and see. I'm gonna have key points and things to show us what I'm talking about. But off the cuff, I'm talking about the drugging, the partying that we did, that the baby boomers did as a community. All the drugs was there. All the drugs was there for, even when they was out in the war, they was doing drugs out there. The baby boomers were doing drugs when they were on tours in the military. And they came back doing the drugs. They came back partying. And if the other baby boomers didn't go to the war, they were partying back in the neighborhoods. And so everybody was up in smoke. This is one of those things you can't take back. These are one of those things you can't make up for. You know what I'm saying? It was what happened. It's how it happened. You know how many baby boomers were smoking crack? Do you know how many baby boomers were on crack cocaine? More than you would like to acknowledge. And some were just partying. You know how many baby boomers were just partying their life away? That's what I'm telling you, man. And while they were doing that, it was things that did not happen that should have happened. And I'm not a person that really believes in fate, because I understand that man's free will can overpower fate. Faith is something that you have no control of, that people believe that just had to happen. It just was fate. But at the same time, though, you can't just look at all outcomes and be like, well, that's the way it happened. That's how it was supposed to happen. In other words, how can you say that was supposed to happen when you didn't have to do drugs? How can you say that was supposed to happen when they didn't have to get on crack cocaine? When the baby boomers didn't have to get on crack cocaine? How was that? How was it fate that we're in shambles now? No, we need to take responsibility. Particularly the baby boomers need to take responsibility. They need to take responsibility and say, well, this country didn't have to be this way. The way this country is not a form of fate. Again, the way this country is not a form of fate reality, if you will. Like, well, it's just how it is. It didn't have to be like this. And that's what that's what I'm going to get into in this campaign. And I'm going to show you the generation that is most responsible for why it is the way it is, and the generation that failed us the most. It's one particular generation, and if I had to pick one, it would definitely be the baby boomers. Definitely. Definitely, because like I said, at that point, if you look at the time of baby boomers, it was a time where America had an opportunity to make a pivotal turn from racism and give opportunities for real opportunities and freedom to the whole African American community. That's what you need to hear. That was the generation. That was the generation that could have changed white and particularly I'm talking to white America when I say this. White baby boomers had the potential to change so much concerning racism and progression as far as the African American community, and you did not do it. You did not do it totally. Okay, we can sit up here and talk about these big bills that were passed, but at the end of the day, some things never changed. At the end of the day, racism was crazy back then, and I believe particularly part of that had to do with a lot of the baby boomers their parents, white America, their parents were racist. So they were influenced from their parents. Even though they came out from obviously from their parents' house, they still kept certain values. Well, I didn't say values, certain perspectives of other communities. And they didn't make the pivotal turn, even though them and African Americans were uniting, interacting, they didn't change. Well, let's put it like this: they didn't do the significant things you would think they would do when a community has changed. They did not give total freedom, and they did not pull the African American community out of the ghetto experience. The baby boomers are the ones that should have been pulling the African American community out of the ghetto experience and making better housing and everything. Now, remind you, if they would have done this before the 90s,